What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Redonkulous Gaming. Today we're back with another Disc Priest video. This time we're going to be rolling with the Kyrian Covenant, and we're going to be granted a couple of different abilities. The first of which is the signature ability that everyone is going to get regardless of what class you join the Kyrian Covenant on, and that is a Swolken Servant. That's what you're going to get. You're going to get an owl that's going to bother you once every 5 minutes if you so choose. It's going to bring you a Phial of Serenity, which gives you the ability to heal for 20% of your base health or cleanse any and all ill-fated issues that could affect you. And that would be bleeds, that would be poisons, that would be, fill in the blank. So it's actually a fairly powerful cleanse. It's one of the stronger Covenant signature abilities because of the fact that it brings every class, regardless of whether or not you have a cleanse, a baseline cleanse for any and all things that could prohibit your performance. And therefore, it's always worth a shout out for that ability. It's very, very powerful. Less impactful for the classes that can already cleanse, but what it does do is it reduces a cooldown that you may have spent on yourself by cleansing yourself, and it opens up one for your group. So incredibly helpful, especially as the difficulty of dungeons and raids and everything starts to scale on us. And as more debuffs go out, just having that ability to be able to have that cleanse as a baseline and take a swig of that potion and get it down. Refresh the potions once every 5 minutes because the Swolken does deliver you a stack of 3. It's actually very strong overall. So Summon Steward is the ability that you get by joining Kyrian. Less impactful for a priest, but like I said, it's already strong to begin with. Mostly the strongest for classes that do not have a baseline cleanse. But that's not why we're here, guys. We're here to talk about Boon of the Ascended. And if you have not seen my videos before, a couple of things that you need to know. I do not, the way I talk about these abilities is I don't come out and say, yeah, you absolutely need to roll with this Covenant because of X, Y, and Z, and if you're dumb if you do one of the other three. That's not the way that this works. I like to talk about each Covenant in this exact same way. And the first of which is one that's more my flavor in terms of what I find fun. So first criteria is it fun for me to play with? Is it something that I enjoy playing with? Or is it something that I just had zero fun with because it didn't change anything about the way I was playing the class? Maybe it's just something that's straight throughput. Maybe it's rather boring. I am a bit of a min-maxer myself, so I tend to go along with whatever is quote-unquote strongest or the flavor of the week. But at the same time, I want to have fun with the class I'm playing, and the fact that Blizzard wants these Covenant abilities to bring us a sense of identity, for better or for worse, they're embracing that, so we have no choice but to embrace that. So I'd like for that Covenant ability that I'm going to be spamming in all my content to be rather fun. So that's the first criteria in which I go about evaluating each of these class Covenant abilities. The second of which is a straightforward question that most of you probably just want to know the answer to, and that is whether or not the ability is strong. What's the strength of the overall ability? Is it something that needs to be reworked entirely, or is it in a relatively good spot? So we'll talk about that. And then lastly, is the Covenant ability going to enable me to go out and do all types of PvE content without restrictions? Is it going to let me do Torghast, dungeons, and raid, and not have me yearning or wanting a different Covenant ability based on the type of content that I am doing? And so that's the way we're going to go about qualifying these. And I'll start first with a little bit of a definition around what Boon of the Ascended is and what it does. So I'll first lead off by saying this is the longest cooldown spell of any of the Priest Covenant abilities. It's on a 3-minute cooldown, whereas the other ones are much, much shorter in nature. The next longest is 1.5 minutes actually, and like Venthyr, for example, that one's only a 45-second cooldown. So this one is the longest one, and we'll get into the why here in a little bit. Now, as far as the way that this thing functions and what the heck it does is Boon of the Ascendants is going to grant you access to 2 abilities. The first of which is Boon of the Ascendants, once activated, is going to turn into Ascended Nova. And then your Smite is going to be replaced by something called Ascended Blast. And Ascended Nova is exactly what it sounds like. It's a AoE ability. And Ascended Blast is a single target ability that also increases your movement speed by 50%. At the end of this 10-second Boon of Ascendance buff that you're granting yourself, you're going to explode for a percentage of spell power, you're going to do damage to unfriendlies, and you're going to heal friendlies that are within a 15-yard radius of where you're standing. So positioning means everything for this one. You'll also be able to increase your damage and healing by 3% for each stack of the Boon of the Ascended that you gain while the buff is active. And the way that you gain more stacks of Boon of the Ascended is simply by using your Ascended Blast, which again replaces your Smite, or your Ascended Nova, which is going to replace your Boon of the Ascended. So it depends on what situation you're in, whether or not you're going to be single targeting or AoEing. So that's the way that that ability works. Now, as far as our criteria is concerned, the first question that I ask myself is this a fun ability? And what I will say is that I actually enjoyed it quite a bit, to the point where I thought I had my mind made up with another Covenant, and this one gave me a run for its money. So Boon of the Ascended, despite the fact that it's on a longer cooldown, and because of that became more of a single target or boss type cooldown instead of just something I was actively using pretty liberally with trash packs. And again, situationally, it all depends. Some trash packs are stronger than others, so Boon of the Ascended may feel more impactful in a scenario like that instead of using, against a boss. Just kind of depends on the type of content you're doing and how strong the trash is. But overall, it became something that I felt was more along the lines of a quote-unquote raid cooldown or a boss cooldown. As far as it being fun, I actually really enjoyed it because just like Unholy Nova with the Necrolords, it changed the way in which I positioned myself. It changed the way in which I was kind of ramping to start to use Boon of the Ascended, because prior to activating Boon of the Ascended, I wanted to make sure I had Atonement up on every single one of my party members. And the reason for that is because for those next 10 seconds, I'm going to be putting out insane amounts of damage, whether it's single target or AoE, and it interacts with your Atonement. So using Ascended Nova or using Ascended Blast, putting out the damage that it does is, of course, only going to increase your healing throughput to any of your targets that have Atonement active on them. So the last part of that is, as those 10 seconds start to fade, and as you finally hit that point in which Boon of the Ascended is going to expire, it releases the Ascended Eruption, which is that 15-yard radius around you that does damage and healing, and it's a significant amount of damage and healing that it does in that last little burst damage. So you're going to want to run in to wherever your closest allies and or enemies are to take full advantage of what the Ascended Eruption does. And then from there, you come out of Boon of the Ascended, and you've got this buff on you that now is going to increase the damage and healing that you're doing for 3% for each stack of Boon of the Ascended that you've gained during that 10-second window. So you're going to want to be really active when Boon of the Ascended is active and is on cooldown during those 10 seconds, because you're ultimately only going to be buffing your performance when you come out of it. So it was really cool overall, a neat interaction where not only was I able to put out substantial healing during that 10-second window, but I was also more powerful immediately after, given the fact that I was buffed from the Boon of Ascended buff that I got during that 10-second window. So overall, it was a fun ability. I like anything that makes it so I have to move or reposition myself. Some people think that's a pain in the butt, but I really like the way that interfaces and works within the dungeon setting, to at least position myself where I'm min-maxing the damage and healing that I'm doing, which is probably why I enjoyed Unholy Nova as much as I did, when other people are probably rolling their eyes at that, because it was just something that added just another layer of complexity to an already complex and rather fun spec and class in the Disc Priest. As far as the ability Strength, I would say that given the fact that this thing's on a 3-minute cooldown, that tells you how strong the ability actually is, because it's not something that Blizzard has given you the ability to cast liberally. It's something that you have to pick your moments in terms of which you're going to be activating Boon of the Ascended. And so overall, it's a very strong ability. Both that the single target Ascended Blast as well as the Ascended Nova both hit pretty darn hard and therefore heal your group whenever you have Atonement active at a pretty good clip as well. And then that last Ascended Eruption, the damage and healing that it does is substantial as well, as long as you're positioned in the right spot. So what I would say is, yes, Boon of the Ascended is a strong ability right now, and I don't know many people who are going to shy away from it too much in terms of it being too weak. I've not heard that yet from anybody that I've talked to who mains a Disc Priest, and most people are actually eyeing Kyrian right now as their default or their de facto choice, given the fact that Boon of the Ascended just is pretty fun to play and in a really good spot in terms of strength. Lastly, the one thing that I want to make sure that I'm able to do when I pick my ability is perform well in all PvE settings, Torghast, dungeons, as well as raid. What I would say is that as of right now, this thing is not target capped, which is going to make it stronger than the other abilities in the raid format, because as long as my party is stacked up within 15 yards of me, I'm going to be able to get a substantial amount of healing done to my raid group when Ascended Eruption occurs, when Boon of the Ascended ends. So that last burst is going to hit really, really hard in the raid format, probably making this the strongest raid Covenant ability. And then in terms of dungeons as well as Torghast, it's going to perform pretty close to on par with the other three abilities there as well. So overall, Boon of the Ascended is going to enable you to do every piece of content, and I would say it will outdo the performance that you get in raid from the other three Covenant abilities. So overall, obviously a very good choice to go with Kyrian in terms of your Disc Priest. But would love to know your thoughts. Like I said, most people that I've talked to who are planning on doing Disc Priest in Shadowlands have all kind of said that Kyrian's the way to go, and this is why X, Y, and Z. I can understand their reasoning for it, but I think there's an argument to be made for the other Covenants as well, depending on how you want to spend your time in Shadowlands. If raid is the one thing that means the most to you, then I can see how a lot of people might default to this right now. But other than that, I think you've got some freedom of choice when it comes to Torghast as well as the Mythic Plus scene. But would love to know your feedback, guys.